It's all things bright and beautiful here, including my smile on Jasiri with a new day ahead of us. Welcome to the show. Now, if you didn't join us yesterday, you missed that. I'm seeing some side eye from it. It's okay, I don't care. You missed some serious nostalgia where we all reminisced about growing up in Nigeria. That's except for Tolu, of course. You know, she's the posh one amongst us. She couldn't relate to anything we're saying. But shout out to our fans for their lovely messages. Today's episode is going to be packed with some punchlines, and it promises to be both enlightening and empowering.
Well, for one, I hope that Governor Umoeno is listening because he needs some enlightening. Why do I say that? Now, can you believe what he said about eggs not being for poor people? That's not fair now. It's actually outrageous.
I can't believe it.
Rejecting the appeal to include eggs among the subsidized food items the government intends to sell to vulnerable people, stating that poor people don't eat eggs.
You say?
Poor people don't
eat eggs.
I mean, can you? No, speaking loud. I'm not hearing. Speaking loud.
He said that poor people don't eat eggs.
Honestly, so if they don't eat egg and they cannot afford meat, they cannot afford chicken, they cannot afford fish, what other source of protein? Oh, wait. What governor again? Governor Umoeno. Oh, crayfish is there.
Yeah. So, you know, I had to go and look for the details of all of this because I wanted to really understand. And in this time, we see a lot of governors trying to do something for the vulnerable people in their states. So it was just last month that the governor sent a bill to the State Assembly for the establishment of a bulk purchase agency, which would buy food items in bulk and then sell to vulnerable people in the state at a subsidized rate. So they're going to do rice, beans, and gari. They will sell 10 kg of each, and then once a month they would get the vulnerable people who are already on the state social register and give it to them or sell it to them, whatever it would be. So during the ceremony, somebody on Facebook asked the question and said, how did they arrive at rice, gari, and beans? That rice and gari are already carbohydrates, while beans was the only protein on the list.
Beans is not protein.
It's not actually core protein.
It is not.
So he now said there should be eggs, particularly for children, but the governor dismissed it and said, poor people don't eat eggs.
Was he?
Let me finish now.
Sorry,
Let's
sir.
look at staple foods. And this is what the governor said while emphasizing that the program being an intervention would not last forever. So he's saying that if we look at the rest of the statement, he's saying that eggs are not a staple food. But when you're talking about whatever is being purchased, this may be the only thing that's on families' take. Yeah. You should add something else. Rice, beans, and gari. It's almost three of the same. It is the same type of food.
I was going to ask, was he saying that so people could laugh? Because, you know, we can be politically... Yes, because, you know, when you stand there, you know... Poor people don't eat eggs.
And the joke is on the poor people. They're still laughing.
Together today.
I agree.
Hi, Lolo, how are you today?
Don't touch me.
I don't understand.
No, because you really know why you're here.
I don't.
You're here because of the magnanimity of our producer and our hair. How can a human being, honestly, with the harsh state of... Can you
We're
let
talking
me?
about poor people not eating eggs.
Yes, and the harsh state of the economy. Somebody had to come to work so glistering. Is it that you don't have any affinity? You don't have empathy? You don't think about poor people?
Oh my God.
Because why are you so shiny when we're all sober?
Because everyone is looking to dig deep into that ray of sunshine in their lives to give them a bright spot that lasts them all day, every day. How does that feel?
Wow, it felt like I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas.
Guys, let me
Somebody's dancing and it's shade.
I'm not taking it down.
Why is your
So that's why I'm dancing, because it makes me happy.
No, I took mine down early February.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I took mine down February
It does make me happy.
It makes me
I
happy.
come home and I'll still see
Exactly. And you put off the lights, all the lights in your living area and put on the Christmas tree. You're
It's a
like,
different economy. We have to be economical. My wallpaper on the TV is a Christmas tree. That's all I need for Christmas.
Finish.
Yeah, of course, you don't need a lot.
That's a
You
But
know,
if I put on my Christmas tree, the lights are okay. I don't need to put on any of that. So I'm saying,
no, Blessing is a minimalist. She doesn't spend money on anything but chin-chin.
No, except for
How is
Archer.
she minimalist?
I'm minimalist because there's no money yet.
No, Tolu, we need to help her towards Christmas. Honestly, everyone, because of the harsh state of the economy, we really want to upgrade Blessing's life from a Christmas tree wallpaper to a real one. Let her experience it for once in her life and have a happy adult.
How did we enter into Christmas? Oh, it's because Catherine can't stand up.
Oh, yeah.
Who says I can't?
Well,
No, seriously.
Don't touch it. Don't
don't-
touch
Who
it.
says I can't stand up?
This
They are
table.
trust- this table.
is still hiding your shame.
Guys, that's why
This
she's here.
table.
Who says I
still
can't?
hiding.
No. Who says I can't stand up?
This table is still hiding.
table.
It's all right.
The decent
Anyway.
modest ones among us.
Honestly, but we can laugh about some of these things. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of us as Nigerians. But we must be so careful when we do speak. Honestly, sometimes I look at these governors and I wonder that when they take these things that they say in retrospect, I want to pray that they feel some kind of remorse. Maybe it just fell out of his mouth. There are some things that people just say.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he put thoughts to it. I know that Governor Umar must be a
Let's
very
stop giving excuses. For
wonderful
these people,
man.
Shall we?
Ah.
Can we just stop?
No,
giving
she's right, because it's not just the government. I
sometimes-
keep remembering all the things that the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, has said. Remember when they were handing themselves, I can't remember if it was increase in salary or they're doing that, they wanted to do palliatives for themselves or something. And he referenced what the president had said about let the poor breathe. And there was massive passing a motion about motion that the Senate something, we let the
Guys,
poor breathe, and they laughed.
If we want to compile
some of these
compile,
atrocities.
believe me, if we want
But
to
all
compile,
these
as
people-
far
Faux
back-
pas? Is it faux pas?
Faux pas.
Faux pas?
Faux pas.
Is it faux pas?
Fupa. It's a fupa.
Yes.
Je ne sais quoi. What's that one? I hear it somewhere.
Je ne sais quoi is not right in
It
this
sounds so
sentence.
real and so
ne sais-
posh. Je ne sais quoi.
But it does not
What
fit
I
in
mean?
this conversation.
She just
At least that one I know.
Guys,
She
we
just wants to-
Anyway.
she just wants to say
She
it.
just wants to say it,
Yes, it sounded like it was apt.
but it's not.
Wow,
Even me that
Tolu.
doesn't understand, I know it's not apt.
Cholu, what is it about you and Blessing wearing like color shade the same?
Do you know what it is? I don't
No
think it's
offense
just
to
blessings. Somehow, there's a bit of color coordination that happens on the set almost every day. And we don't even talk about it.
Except the tree that lights up.
And I am that tree.
Honestly.
I color coordinated with Catherine on Monday was
Yeah.
yellow. Then there were touches of somehow.
But Tolu, on this egg
happens.
matter, honestly, egg is not for the poor. Because egg per crate now is 4,002.
Why are you going per crate? Why don't you just take your eggs one by one and then you
Baloche,
can alternate
200
it?
naira for
It's
one
better
egg.
to buy per crate.
Crate.
Serious?
What
I
200
tell you.
naira
The same
for
way it's
one?
better to buy a full tank of fuel. Because we are buying small spoil, it just keeps going down.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't, honestly.
It goes and comes.
No,
It's
that's
better
for
to buy
you.
per crate.
I cannot sit down and let somebody fill my tank with about 70K in the sitting. No, I will take that only standing.
No.
It can
On Monday
happen.
mornings.
No, I can throttle
On
you
Monday
because
mornings, I entered this office with a full tank. That's my
Like,
routine.
that's how
Every
I did send you
Monday.
to be
Tolu, you are married. You are married. You have
He's
a
not paying
fuel
for my
allowance.
fuel. That's not the allowance I'm getting.
Jesus is a bulldozer, amen. He's a bulldozer, amen. He's a bulldozer.
Why did you hold my own hand?
hand? You are single. She's married. Two of us have Jesus as our husband.
Yes.
So until he give us full tank allowance, we shall not be buying it.
Cheers.
You're going back to this middle tomorrow.
I
don't know what's worse. Whether them fighting, I'm afraid of this, their collaboration, and how it might end
How it
as a
might end.
conspiracy.
Anyway,
So I'm not sure I'm
But-
comfortable.
honestly, do you know who I missed suddenly? Patience Jonathan.
Ah.
Mama P. She had such hilarious, hilarious.
The woman was the epitome of authenticity.
authenticity.
Grassroots authenticity. She didn't care. She will
It
say
didn't need to be
exactly.
good. It didn't
how-
need to be palatable. But it
Yeah.
was what it
But
was.
what is it
Yeah.
about Nigerians that we don't see the good in people until they go?
No,
Because I remember, although some people liked her, but a lot of people would always criticize, like, who is this illiterate? They
What
were
are you
this, who is this?
criticizing?
They were always speaking something negative about
What
her. And then
are
all
you
of a sudden, people
criticizing?
started missing her.
What are you criticizing?
That's it.
My sister, there is God. All the blood that you are sharing all over the place.
Continue.
How can we keep quiet? Okay. Lolo, calm down. Let's take a breather
Yes.
and regroup. After the break, we shall focus on our focus. It's still Women's Month, and the conversation that we will be having after we return is sexual health.
It's what?
Sexual.
No.
Sexual
what?
health.
Exactly.
All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
We will be taking a quick break. Stay tuned. Jasiri comes back. If you're not taking this dose, then you're sick, really.
Welcome welcome back. We're live streaming on our social media platforms. We are at New Central TV. Please use the hashtag Jasiri to be part of the conversation so we know you're watching. Today, we're going to touch on a subject that is culturally seen as a taboo. For decades, women have not been encouraged or allowed, in some cases, to own their bodies. Sexual health and empowerment is more than just physicality. It's about reclaiming our autonomy, making better informed decisions, and embracing our sexuality with confidence and without shame. Our guest this morning is a very apt individual for this discussion. She's a sex therapist. Yes, there are sex therapists in Nigeria. She's also who's clearing their throats? Oh, she's also a coach. Ladies, let's welcome Olawunmi Esan to Jasiri. Hello.
Hi.
I would make Catherine start because all that throat clearing feels like there's something else that's stuck and waiting to come out. But regardless of that, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So to kick things off, could you really share with us what sparked your passion for advocating for sexual health and empowerment, particularly in Nigeria?
I've always been interested in sex, learning about it, and I started out studying psychology, and then from there I continued my trainings in counseling, psychotherapy, and all of that. So even though I had started my training, I knew it was something I wanted to do, and I was doing it like on a much lower level, right? And I had my first child. She was a really big baby. She was like 5.2 kilos.
My heart.
Yeah, and then after I had the baby, I would ask like the doctors, nurses and people around me, so what do you do with a vagina? I hope I can say that.
Yeah.
That has birthed that kind of big baby. And I noticed people were so embarrassed that I was talking about my vagina, and I was not shy about it. And of course, I found my solution and what have you, but that was like a wake-up call to me that people really need the help, that, professional help. And even though this is something I had already started doing, I was not making noise about it as much. And it was like, you have to sit up and really, really start making noise about this because people need this help. And if you couldn't get the help that you needed, imagine how many other people are there with various forms of sexual problems and they don't have the help that, they need. And I guess that was how I then started to say, okay, you know what, we have to make more noise about this.
Okay. Catherine, ask your question.
No.
The baby.
Oh my God. The first thing that comes to my mind is sexual liberation.
Yeah.
Do you think we're sexually liberated in Nigeria? Well, that's one. And then body positivity. We hear that thrown around also in some spaces. How do they relate? How do we make this work for us in healthy ways? But first of all, really, are we sexually liberated in Nigeria? What would you say about that?
I would say this. We weren't as sexually liberated as we are today, but it gets better. It has gotten better over the years. And so we've gone from a space of we can't even talk about sex. Like you ask anybody about sex and people are looking at you with bad eye, like, who's this bad person, right? And now people are getting more comfortable having those conversations, more comfortable owning their pleasure, more comfortable talking about sex, seeking help as well. So we're getting there. We're not there yet, but it's a journey. And I feel like we're getting there with every passing day, every passing year. It gets better.
Wow, it's good that we're talking. It's even weird that we're even allowed or being able to talk about these kinds of things because it's a stigma. Trust me growing up, I know nobody will believe it, but I got to find out that women, our vaginas have 3 holes.
Yes.
Just 2 years ago.
Okay.
Because someone showed me a picture, and I swear to God, I had no idea what that was. Because growing up, it wasn't even something we were allowed to say.
Absolutely.
I don't think and that's how many homes have been.
Yeah.
It's growing up felt like it was something illicit or
dirty. Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of dirty, and the information are just kept in. Our cultural background and our attitude.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that because we grow up being taught to fear sex, fear our sexuality. As a child, ask our parents, so what is sex? Shut up your mouth. Where are you learning all this nonsense from, right? And then you have all of that, and then you get to, you become a teenager, and everybody's saying don't have sex. If a boy touches you, you're going to get pregnant. Yeah. If you touch a girl and she gets pregnant, your life is over. All of those things are happening, and then you get to university, finish university, and then you graduate, and then next thing they're asking you, where's the husband, right? And then you bring a husband, you get married, and everybody just expects you to
know how
somehow
to
know
figure it
how.
out.
So from a journey of negativity and fear-based sexuality, you know, all of that negative socialization around sex has been happening all your life, and then you get married, and then people are saying, you have to give it to him like this, you have to do that. How?
From where?
Like, exactly. How do you
gonna
make
pull
that
the rabbit
transition?
from
It
the
doesn't happen, right? And so a lot of people are struggling even sexually in their marriages as a result of where they've come from
Honestly,
all their lives.
You know, I was a virgin when I married my first husband. Maybe, I don't know if the second is coming, but, and I can tell you, because I've been a Christian all my life, it was one of my most traumatic experiences because it took 2 days for him to get through to me, and maybe because of where we're both coming from, nobody, in fact, I didn't even know things like lube, all those things existed.
Absolutely.
And I was 27 about that time, like 20-something years ago. But it was so hard for me that after that, a whole, like 2 weeks, I was peeing in water. That means I must have had bruises, I must have had cuts to be able to, you know, when you pee, the salt in our urine actually stings so bad. But so how are we going to be able to educate our children without sounding as if we're feeding them with knowledge they ought not to be having?
Absolutely. And I love that question because it's when people hear sex educate your children, they think we're saying talk to your children about intercourse. And that is not what is happening at all, right? Because sexuality education should be age appropriate. What you would tell an 18, 19, 20-year-old is not what you would tell a 6-year-old, right? And for children, it starts as, I mean, things as basic as their bodies, right? So, for instance, we're not saying call your vagina a cookie. It is a vagina. It's not a dirty word because the connotation, the understanding that we should use other names suggests, right? It connotes that these parts of our bodies are dirty, right? If I can call my hand and I don't call it a bread, why do I have to call my vagina a cookie? Do you understand? Exactly. Or you call the penis a thing or whatever. Like, it's a penis, it's a body part. And so starting from that part of helping them name their bodies correctly is also a way of helping them embrace every part of their bodies, including their sexuality. And then, you know, as you go from there, you go into other things, the age that they are. You start to talk about boundaries. Exactly, very age appropriate. So you're talking boundaries, for instance, to a 6 or 7-year-old, and you say, you know what, you shouldn't touch people in certain areas. People shouldn't, because it goes 2 ways. It goes both ways. People shouldn't touch you like this. What do you do if someone tries to kiss you? All of those things are part of sexuality education. But people think when we say talk to your children about sex, we're saying talk to them about intercourse, like, so this is what happens. The man will sleep on the woman. No. That's not what happens because it's not age appropriate depending on the age of the child. Right? So it's usually basically age appropriate in a way that, you know, the child can understand and what is appropriate for their age. Because what you say to a 13-year-old is even different from what you say to a 20-year-old.
Wow.
So as I want, sorry, Blessings, I want to follow up because I still think we need to explore this part a little bit more because of our cultural attitudes towards sex. And in the work that you've done, I really want to know how these attitudes have affected people, particularly couples, as they try to proceed without knowledge. Somebody was saying that when you get married and your sexual relations are the thing, it's like one of the few things in the world that people expect you to know how to do without education. Without any education. Absolutely. So in the work you've done, how have you seen these cultural attitudes, very conservative, limited, restricted attitudes, impact couples when it comes to them trying to pursue a healthy and mutually satisfying relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like she said she didn't know up until 2 years ago that there were 3 holes in the female genitalia. And, you know, you've had couples who are like new to it and they've tried to penetrate the anus, the back door, as opposed to, you know, because they don't even know where it is. Do you understand?
So
and they don't have that understanding.
Is this also an issue with teaching female anatomy? We make it feel like female anatomy needs to just be shrouded in something
secrecy. Absolutely. Because if you find a lot of times, even women don't even know what's going on down there, right? And then if you don't know, how can you teach? We also have the expectation that, oh, men are supposed to know. They're supposed to lead the way. But who teaches them? Nobody's teaching them anything, right? You have that happen, and then issues around not being able to achieve first-time intercourse. I've worked with couples who have gone 4 years and have not been able to achieve intercourse.
Wow.
Yes,
4 years.
Yes, 4 years. I've even seen 6, 7, even 10. I've seen, But because
of what?
They've not been able to achieve intercourse because for several reasons, right? But for a lot of people, a lot of pain at the point of penetration and all of that. So they're like, no, I can't do this, I can't do this. And, they were not expecting it to be that serious. Do you understand? And for some people, it's a condition called vaginismus.
Yes,
a lot of
I
people,
wanted you to touch on
don't
that.
really
And
know
that's
about
psychological and physical.
Yes, so it's psychosomatic. So psychological, but it presents somatically in your body. So there's that as well. And so a lot of these things happen, but because we've not been taught to talk about sex, we think we're supposed to figure it out. And sex is really shrouded in a lot of secrecy, and there's a lot of shame surrounding it as well. So people are like, oh, I'm not going to say anything. We're supposed to figure it out. If we're not figuring it out, maybe something is wrong with me.
4, 5, 6 years.
Yes, because people are keeping quiet. And what happens is, of course, it starts to impact the relationship as well. And then you find that somebody is saying, you know what, I've tried after all these years, I'm tired. In fact, it is your problem, right? And I'm just going to look for my own solutions, So a lot of times you find that the relationship has really eroded because, a lot of people will say sex is not really a big deal, but it is. If you find people who have sexual problems, the magnitude it takes on the relationship, it just really affects everything.
It amplifies things that would be smaller.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it just really affects everything. And then you find that as a result of that, the relationship itself begins to suffer. And then by the time they now say, okay, let's even reach out to somebody, things have really gone south. Do you understand? But it's getting better. Now you have people who would, be in that position. So for instance, we've created resources that can help people in that way. So you're getting married, you want to take a course and learn about these things. That really helps people as well. You have people who then now know that, okay, there are people that we can reach out to. If you're having difficulties and we've tried and we can't fix it, let's just reach out to someone that can help us.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm glad that you mentioned some of these things because that's what where I was going to, speaking of the challenges and how it affects the relationship, which you have clarified. But one thing I would also like to know is, now, it gets to a point where these new couples want to reach out to someone, and most of the time it's medical practitioners. But then we find out that in this society, even medical practitioners sometimes don't know what they're doing. Like someone presents a case of vaginismus and goes to see a medical practitioner, and the man is like, you have a problem. Just be trying. Just keep trying. There's no. He literally doesn't know. Yeah, he doesn't know. So I was watching a YouTube I think interview about a lady who was sharing her experience, and she said the doctor literally tried to put his hands there and break something. Yeah, and she felt really assaulted.
Absolutely.
Like the nurses had to come in and shout like, "What are you doing?" It was like, yeah, it's just a simple thing. Let's just try and remove, So in lots of medical practitioners, you find that they don't even know what they're doing. Yeah. So this challenge is not just about educating the people themselves, the women and the men. Yeah. How well educated are the medical practitioners in that regard?
That's true. You're absolutely right. I think nowadays we're also having more medical practitioners be more advised about these things. And another thing that happens is that now, because we obviously have sex therapists now, I usually would have, in my case, have medical practitioners refer clients to me if it's outside of their expertise. And that's something that happens as well. But yes, like you said, you have a lot of medical practitioners that don't know this, and a lot of people have been traumatized. So in this case of vaginismus, I've had clients who have actually had surgery because of it, and it doesn't require surgery at all. Do you understand? I've had clients that have had surgery. I've had clients that have had all sorts of interventions that did not work. It just traumatized them further. Some of them will go to the hospitals, and then they will hear things like, "You're a wicked woman, so you're just holding your body like this. And you're punishing this man. Why are you doing like this, right?" And it just further traumatizes the person because it's not her fault, right? But people don't understand this thing. They just feel something that you just, small thing, just chest it and you'll be okay. But all of these things, like this conversation we're having here today, a lot of work that we do on social media as well, we continue to, educate people as much as possible to be better advised about these things and to reach out, when they have these problems, as opposed to trying to find ways to sort it out on their own, and more often than not, they're just further traumatizing themselves.
So when you talk about the interventions for this, I know there are different remedies or therapies, but a lot of it involves communication between the partners and a situation in which trust is established. You ease yourself into those things and everything, but communication is very key. And if you're on Nigerian social media, you will read enough, dear auntie, dear this one, my husband doesn't know how to do this one, my wife has been doing this one, and it just seems that we all end up talking around the issue, but what a lot of relationships seem to lack is communication about sexual desires, fantasies even, wants, and what it may be and what not. how do we encourage individuals and couples in particular to foster open communication, open lines on these things? Yes, there's going to be a line your partner will draw and say, I can do everything you want, I just won't do this.
Yeah.
But it starts from having an open conversation about it. How do we encourage individuals to foster that, especially when many of us, many Nigerians growing up, married now, married 1 year, married 20 years, have never sat down. We've just gone into it and you just continue thinking somehow you're experts on this.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, we must continue to have these conversations to let people understand that sex, yes, we might think that sex is instinctive because, I mean, you can get an erection and what have you, but great sex is not. It has to be learned. Like every other thing that you do in this life is learned, right? Nobody came from heaven with the knowledge. And because you are two different individuals, it's very important that you would understand where you're coming from. You understand if you're on the same page or not.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, you have to communicate. Those things are very important. You know, the myth or the mindset that we're supposed to know how to do these things, we don't need to talk about it. These are some of the things we also have to start dispelling. That, you know what, it's not, nobody came with the knowledge from heaven. Yeah. We need to be able to talk about this.
Except for Adam and Eve.
And then they spot that. They spot that.
Yeah, so I'm sure even Adam and Eve, they had their process of learning each other, you know, while doing that. I want to believe, even though I was not in the garden.
You must have observed the anatomy.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to talk because for us older women, maybe I'll talk for my age demographic. Pleasure is something, we can even say taboo. We might even say taboo for sex, but it's like double taboo for pleasure. Because it is often looked at as taboo. Discussing pleasure sexually for some people is just not something you want to talk about. Yeah. So how can individuals prioritize their own pleasure, you know, to be able to enjoy all the joy that comes from it? It's not like my own mother in her own time. She used to tell me that women are not supposed to enjoy it. Yeah. Oh. They said, she would tell me that even at that time, that you are even doing Iggy Yaga. You also would be like, are you loose? Whoa, what's wrong? Yes. I know many years ago, a very close person to me, that time that every woman came out, and you know that they were telling women, be more explorative in your bedroom, and she would do a different position for her husband. And the man would get up immediately. He got up immediately, and they did not have sex for like a whole year. Now, where did you learn that from? That position is from hell. Who told you? Yeah. And she was like, in church, they asked us that we should do more. She said, oh, so they asked you to do like dog? You know?
So, because what she's saying is education for women, but also unlearning of cultural attitude a lot for some men.
So when it comes to pleasure for us women, how do we bridge that gap?
Absolutely. So, you know what? One of the things I've come to understand, and this is my process when I work with people, we first address the mental restrictions, the mental inhibitions that you have, because that's like the biggest thing. Sex starts in your mind. If you think that sex is not good for you, it's not for you as a woman, it's just for the man, then you are going to act in that way. If you feel like sex is not for your pleasure, what you will do, like Father Christmas, is that you will give your body, but you will not get anything in return, basically, right? And that's what happens. So that mindset, a lot of mindsets that people have restrict them from being in the space of owning their own pleasure, or even realizing that their pleasure should be for them even as women. And it also goes back to communication. With the example that you gave, imagine that man saying, this is a style from hell. So, but you know the interesting thing, it might sound very out there, like, okay, nowadays people want to do that style and what have you, but you have couples who are about to get married and they're not talking about sex, and then they get married and somebody says, oh, I can't do oral, I can't put my mouth there, and then the other person wants it. And I'm saying, like, today modern couples, right? Not, do you understand? So we don't even have to go that far.
Yeah.
Because people are not having these conversations, they just think things will fall into place. I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, right? Because also I have a lot of people come to me after getting married, inexperienced, and like, okay, I don't even know what to do. So when he's touching me, what should I do? Just staying there. I don't even, do you understand? And so there's a lot of things that people need to learn. There's a lot of communication that also has to happen, but you find that these things are not happening. And, you know, there's this Yoruba saying, this adage that says that when you are tutored, or when you are tended when they teach you to grow, you have to like retrain yourself. Like when they train you, you have to like retrain yourself, right? And that is where we have to start taking the reins for ourselves to say, okay, this is what they have trained me so far. This is how they have trained me so far when it comes to this area.
Yeah.
Is there work that I need to do? Do I have to retrain myself? Do I have to unlearn some things that, you know, I have learned over the course of my life, and do I have to learn new things to become the person that I want to be sexually, to own my pleasure, to own my sexuality, and to be expressive, you understand? Or to be able to accommodate what my partner wants and what we want together and have a more satisfying sex life. So being able to understand that, yes, you've been trained, but how can you retrain yourself to be better?
Ownership.
All right.
This is so deep.
All right. Well, we'll hold the thought now once we go on a short break, and when we come back, because I still have a question that is burning in my heart, especially you know based off of what you said. But we'll go on a short break. When we come back, the conversation continues. Thank you for staying with us on Jasiri, and we're still having a very important conversation. I wanted to PG-18 myself out of here, but it's actually a very crucial conversation for everybody, to be honest. And we still have our guest, Olawunmi Esan, who is a sex therapist. Very rare. I think I want to quit journalism and, you know, look into that direction.
You're welcome.
You know, at first when she said, you know, she found out she was interested in sex, she said learning about it, I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, Olawunmi, I was saying that I wanted to ask a question, and that question, you know, bothers majorly on healing, right? Absolutely. We've had a lot of people that have experienced trauma, you know, from these experiences because, of course, they don't know about it. So I think the first question is going to be, how do people heal from it? And then secondly, there's something you said that I want us to, you know, circle back to, the ability to have open conversations about this thing. Now, I'm not saying go about telling your neighbors that you're having issues, but there's certain people who cannot, they feel embarrassed, you know, to talk about their challenges, even with people that are professionals. Some people would even ask you a question and say, I'm asking for a friend. No, you're asking for yourself. You know, so how do people come to that realization that this is very important? It's a conversation that you should be free to ask. And then secondly, how can they heal from their past trauma?
Okay, so let me take the second one. How can they heal from their past trauma? So like you rightly said, there are a lot of people who have experienced sexual trauma, and a lot of people have been silent about it because it's also perceived as a thing of shame, right? And one way or the other, you find that trauma can splash in so many ways. For some people, it affects their sexuality and their sex lives. For some people, in totally other different ways, right? But I won't go too deeply into that. But the first thing is, I tell people this, I say, people have this misconception that if trauma's happened years ago, you should just forget about it and get past it. And I tell people this, I say, you know what, unresolved trauma is just as fresh as if it happened yesterday. So you can go for 50 years, if that trauma is still unresolved, by the time you start to poke and prod at it and explore it, you're going to feel the emotions, everything, as if it just happened, right? And that's what people need to realize. First of all, it doesn't matter how long this has happened. If it's unresolved, if it's affecting your life in any way at all, it's an indication that you need to work on it, you need to resolve it. And regardless of how it happened, whatever it is, right? And it's important that people understand that you need to be able to see someone who can help you, right? Who is trained to be able to help, you walk through the trauma that you have been through without shame, so that you can start to heal, right? And healing, very interestingly, healing from trauma of any kind is not necessarily something that just goes like this. Sometimes it can be very, topsy-turvy and, like an undulating pattern, really. And so you also have to understand that even in the process of healing, you need support, a support system. You need to feel safe. And regardless of what happens, when you're on the highs or when you're on the lows, you need to understand that this is part of the process. But you will be fine. You will heal. And the point of healing is to be able to look at that incident, but it's not that you're going to forget. You don't have amnesia, but be able to look at that incident, but not with the pain that you felt, before resolving it. So people being open to, it doesn't matter how long it has happened. It doesn't matter at all. If it's unresolved, it's still as fresh as if it just happened. So people being open enough to say, okay, let me see who can help me work on this trauma that I've been through so that I can heal and become, a better version of myself.
Sorry, I just want to piggy off what she said, talking about, because these days we are finding that there's so many extremes of the spectrum. No, sexually, a lot of old sexuality has gotten to a level that some people have become so empowered
Yes.
by themselves on their own. And they have partners that have not caught up
Yes.
to where they are. And the extreme of the spectrum they're on, their partner sees
one
is
person
at
is here, one person is
like
here.
a mountain and it's a valley situation.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's conventional. So how do you want to be able to, because you say communication, they've talked about
How do
it,
you marry
but
that?
it's still a mountain and a valley situation. So how can that work? Because somebody that is into whips and chains and somebody that is into missionary.
Yeah.
Feels like where's the
mountain-
compromise?
Yes. So
Where's the halfway point?
where's the halfway point? Because I know a lot of people say, I know a woman that told me a story. It traumatized me
Okay.
because she said her husband likes to do the back thing.
Okay.
And she had never, but when she would go out for counseling, people would say,
Give your husband
give your
what he
husband
wants."
what she wants. And he says every time he does that, she feels abused, she feels traumatized, that she had a baby and she had just come off like maybe 6 weeks of Claire.
Yeah.
And the man would go that way again.
Okay.
She did have PTSD. So now she's torn between leaving the marriage and keep giving him what
he
she
wants.
feels. Every time she does it, she says she feels defiled. She uses such negative words to describe it.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to clarify, right? So there can be two different scenarios of what you said, where maybe somebody has is not as sexually experienced as the other person, right? And so I may be, just missionary, this is what I know. And then the person I'm with is, let's do everything. Let's play in the car, in the bed, in the everywhere, outside. So these are two different, like, what's it called, in terms of your level of experience. So that's one. And then there's the one where you have somebody who is like, okay, this is what I can do. And then the other person says, no, I want you to do this, which is like the second example where you that you gave. So in terms of that, where somebody is being forced to do what they are not comfortable with, it's not so much about being able to rise to that level, right? Because I do believe that in a relationship, you have two people there, right? And people should be able to say what it is they're comfortable with. I don't think that people should be forced to do what they're not comfortable with. If over time they get to a point of comfort, it's fine. But if they're not comfortable with it, if you say things like she feels abused and defiled and all of that, it's not something obviously that she wants, likes, enjoys, or even wants to do. And so that is not something that should be happening, right? And so people saying things like, because it's your husband, you should be able to do this. It shouldn't be happening, right? And they both need to, and again, you find a lot of these things are very tricky, right? Very complicated, complex sometimes, because this other person might be thinking this is what it's supposed to be, right? And a lot of that happens because, like we said again, goes back to communication. We have not spoken about these things, right? Somebody has not said, this is what I'm interested in, this is where I would draw the line. We've not had conversations around boundaries. So we are saying, because we are married, then everything goes. Do you understand? But again, there's the power of agreement. Are you agreeing to these things together, or is it just one person saying, this is what we must do, right? But again, if you look at it, the reality of a lot of relationships is not a reality where people are having these conversations, where people feel like, okay, we're on the same level, we should talk about it, we're partners and what have you. You usually would have maybe like there's a balance of power in some relationships skewed towards this other person, and this other person is continuously demanding. If it's not something that works for her, then it's not something that she should be doing.
All right, Olawunmi Esan, thank you so much for your invaluable insights, because honestly, like, we have learned a lot, and I like that this is a reminder that people need to have these conversations, and there are ways to solve these problems, and getting rid of the naivety is one thing that would help a lot of people, including the men, the women, and the medical practitioners, which is also important to know. Thank you so much for the engaging conversation.
Thank you.
All right, we have had a very beautiful conversation here about, the insights, towards sex, around sex, and the beautiful conversation that surrounds it. But our conversation is just getting started. We've covered a lot of ground, but our journey doesn't end here. We have hot topics coming up after the break, so stay with us.
Welcome back to Jasiri. Now, it's still Women's Month, so today we're giving Adora Omeji her flowers this morning. She's been appointed as Zenith Bank's first female Group MD and CEO. She's been diligently serving as the deputy MD of the bank since October 2016 and has been with the bank for 26 years. Wow. She's not a small somebody. Her accolades are plenty. Now, aside from her academic and performance excellence, she was honored by the federal government of Nigeria with Officer of the Order of the Niger for her contributions to nation building. She's also a peace advocate of the United Nations.
Wow. Have you seen how beautiful she looks?
Yeah, I need Catherine to reel out her.
No,
come on now.
Hey, Jesus. Her resume, guys, is impressive. Now, she's an alumnus of the Harvard Business School and Columbia Business School. She has a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Jos, a bachelor's degree in accounting, a first-class honors in law as well, a master's in law from the University of Salford, an MBA from the University of Calabar, California? Unical. Put it together now. The doctorate of business administration from Apollos University. That's not all. Adora Merji from the Jasiri table to you, my sister. We raise Beyonce hand to you and we celebrate. Absolutely. Did you see?
However,
were you hearing what I was hearing?
No.
It's intimidating.
No.
Very.
This is how we used to silence people like that.
But you know that, honestly, this is impressive. But what is disheartening to see are some people's reacting negatively to our appointment. I saw tweets that just shook my head, and I just shook my head. Honestly, because it takes a degraded and deluded person to spill the kind of filth that they had against her. You know, just take a look at some of the reactions that we saw all over social media about her appointment.
So somebody says, with all of this, she's yet to be married. A woman that cannot build a family, she's appointed to build a bank. Make it make sense.
And this person is verified, though.
Verification does not mean sense. What else do we have? Because we also don't have a lot of time. Looks like she's, looks like she's using cream to make herself lighter. Why can't they just be proud to be black and successful? Wow. What else do we have here? Oh, just please, let's move on. What's that? Beauty enhanced the marketing, so the steep rise was a definitive outcome, especially that the market, what? This is defamatory. Like, let's, at this point, because we don't have a lot of time, ladies, I've seen so many comments that have taken her on because she's a pretty woman, she's an established woman, she's now MD of one of the leading banks in the country, but she joins massive company. There's so many women leading the forefront, and the fact that people are still talking about whether or not she's married, whether or not she did any plastic, like,
how does that affect her intellectual ability?
No, guys. I actually read one or saw one that alluded to her being like a runs girl.
Yes, like she's slay queen. And people said, oh, MD, the Kiniko is a slay queen.
I cannot get over her accolades. I cannot get over what that woman has done with her life. I'm wondering, when did she start? When did she have the time to? I thought I'm a planner. When did she have time to plan all these years? She invested in herself with knowledge.
Yes,
and all you can see
is her beauty.
Or a lack of a ring.
Or lack of a ring.
So I was listening to somebody talk about it on radio yesterday. And then the presenter, and this is why I think we need to really worry about who's presenting radio shows. The presenter now said, with somebody like this, he can't understand how people will be saying that women in Nigeria are oppressed. I almost ran into the car in front of me because I found that statement from a senior presenter to be lacking in a lot of contextual understanding. How would you tell me? Let's be honest, she is one of one. She's one of 10 right now, or 10 or 11 thereabouts. But she, in a country of 200 million people, 50% of the population are women, 100 million. We do not have 100 million adoras. No. We do not have 50. We don't even have 10. We probably only have maybe 100 of them. The majority of Nigerian women are facing difficult situations because they are women.
Yes.
Nigeria is one of the countries where it is, once you're born a female, you already have multiple odds stacked against you. What are you telling me?
I mean, it's sad because I think at this point, I'm no longer surprised by anything that people say. The truth is, for every post I saw, I went to the comments, and the number of congratulations I saw was not up to 5. It was like, oh, it's the brows for me. Oh, why are they now jumping at her? Oh, what did she do that nobody has done before?
But anyway, we need to know that social media is full of very, very funny people. Most of the time when I see such comments, I just go to their own individual pages and I see the emptiness there. So I don't even make
So,
a
yeah,
comment.
that's the
really,
word.
Because when you look at the person making the comment,
You
there
know,
is
Rich,
nothing
the
to
person-
comment
yeah,
about.
But
So
it's a narrative that is again repeated,
Yeah.
amplified, becomes part of the conversation that we see.
every day now, if you're not married, my cousin is not married. She's almost 60, and she has worked in Chevron all her life, and she says she's comfortable that way, and there is nothing wrong with
And
her.
if you ask her what marriage
guys.
brings for her, she'll probably tell you she's not interested. It's not.
She's
What is it going to
60.
do for her?
Listen,
well,
and the
there are
truth is-
70-year-olds getting married.
Doesn't
Lolo.
want it.
In any
She
way-
lives on her own. She
Anyway,
doesn't even have a dog.
listen, this is where we draw the line, or draw the curtain on to a close on today's episode of Just Siri. We've covered a lot of ground, from challenging statements by leaders to empowering discussions on sexual health and celebrating milestones in gender equality. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Join us next time, that's tomorrow, for Fearless Convos. Until then, stay informed, stay empowered, stay fearless, and stay slaying.
Slay!